Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to a professional DJ out of West Springfield, Massachusetts. His name is Tony TC's Cortis. He's been doing DJ for like really long time. So we wanted to have this conversation about professional vendors, working with them, and familiar vendors that work together often. So, Tony, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in business since 1999. I concentrate my wedding business on a small area compared to most vendors who will go almost anywhere. Everybody makes fun of Tony in the wedding world because, see, this table is an octagon, but I like to go in a little circle, usually within 45 minutes. So you'll find me at all local venues that on a constant basis, because those are only the ones that I go to. So I'm very familiar with those venues all the time. You know, Log Cabin, you can talk any of the ones in Agawam, Chicopee, West Springfield, Holyoke. Those are my stomping grounds.
So I met Tony at a vendor night where we were just talking to a whole bunch of people. But how many DJs do you have working under you now?
Now we have, I got to count, 4 plus me.
4 plus you. And how many weddings a year do you do?
These days, about
between all of you guys.
185.
That's just simple. So Tony and I had this conversation about him and I do a lot of weddings a lot together. So we have like little signals that we know something's coming up. So we wanted to talk to brides and grooms that are coming down the road about the benefits of working with vendors that work together often. So Tony is like the king of timelines. So I want Tony to kind of explain to you the benefit of working with, keeping the timeline the most important part, but the benefits of working with vendors that work together often.
So we'll talk a little bit first about the timeline and execution and flow of the night. My idea of a perfect wedding that is flow of the night has to be in the guest head. They have to feel that flow perfectly, so it has to be executed by all vendors perfectly, seamlessly, and flawlessly. So when you're working with somebody that you've worked with a lot, and we have our hashtag dream team that we use a lot, and that doesn't necessarily mean me and Ron, it could be me and somebody else, it could be Ron and somebody else, but those vendors that you work with a lot that I can look at Ron and point in a direction and he's probably going to know what I'm talking about. Plus, going to something simple we just talked about before we started this video of if I need Ron for something, for a specific picture that I want him to take or that I think he needs to take, I know his name. There might be a vendor that I work with that I don't work with often. I have to flip through my sheet real quick and I got to find their name, or they might not be used to my style and my flow and my execution of the way that I do things. And we have to work together. When you're working with somebody that you work with often, it just comes naturally. It's like, I explain to my clients a lot. You go to work every day, you work with the same people. When you get a new person comes in, it's almost, there's a little uncomfortableness there. And they start working with that person, and then once they get used to them, then it creates that seamless work environment with them. But it takes a little bit to get used to them. So it might take 1 or 2 weddings for me to get used to working with somebody. They understand how I work. But when you work with, a particular photographer, it could be a venue coordinator, it could be, anybody in the wedding world that you work with maybe 20-30% of your year. You just walk in and you're like, yep, boom, done. Even going back to the planning aspect of the wedding, when I'm planning a wedding with a couple and I'm drawing up their timeline, I look down and I go, okay, well, their JP is Dale. I know Dale likes a lapel mic. Mickey as well likes a lapel mic now, so I don't even have to ask those questions to the client. Oh, Ron's doing your photos. Oh, never mind. Don't worry about sunset times, anything like that. I'll go over that when I talk to Ron. Not only do I talk to him at the wedding, but I'm talking to him before the wedding, I'm talking to him after the wedding. I'm in his studio right now. Stuff like that, it just makes life a lot easier when you're doing it that way. So
there's a benefit to working with familiar vendors when it comes to that, because you know me, you know that your timeline is showing, okay, Ron is going to be doing this, we're going to be doing the cake cutting, we're going to be doing whatever we're going to be doing, father-daughter kind of thing like that. So knowing where the vendors are at all times, I feel like is another part that is important, that if I didn't know Tony, My job is to go in and introduce myself. Hey, Mr. DJ, my name is so-and-so. I'll be over here. Let me know if you need anything. What's the benefits of working with professional vendors, setting aside the family, friends kind of thing like that, and just as a professional vendor, there's a little bit of a camaraderie knowing that there's another professional that does weddings all the time in the same room as you, so that whether we've never worked together or not, you know you've got your job, I know I've got my job. Let's make sure that we mesh that together so that the bride and groom never see any hiccups. Because hiccups happen. So explain to me the benefits of having a timeline for your wedding day.
Timeline's going to go to the flow of the night, which to me is the absolute success of the night. So everything's timed out. The bride and groom already know when things are going to happen. Does it ever, to the minute, does it ever happen that way? No, I can't say that because it has. If it does, awesome, and those are the perfect weddings when that timeline flows perfectly. But we are been trained and been doing this so long that if a hiccup happens, we know how to get ourselves back on track, working with the other vendors, whether it be, a caterer will be a good example of this one, of a timeline. If introductions get backed up, say your ceremony starts at 3, you're going to be 3 to 3:30 ceremony, your 3:30 to 4:30 is going to be your social hour with Ron, you're going to finish your formal photos, do any of that stuff, and then 4:30 to 5 is going to be scheduled for your intros, your first dance, your toast, your blessing, and then dinner. Now, if that gets backed up any, obviously dinner's got to get backed up. So I'm going to run and, even though I'm the DJ and not thinking that the DJ does these kinds of things, but I'm going to run and let the caterer know, hey, we're 15 minutes behind. Bride had a little bit of issue bustling her dress.
Usually they're bustling her dress.
It's happened a few times. Me and Ron are going to learn how to do that one of these days, because we can fix anything else but the dress at this point. So I'm letting that caterer know, we're 10 minutes behind, this happened, yada, 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 and I'm constant in communication with all the other vendors. When you work with somebody that you don't work with often, you might not know where they are. Speaking about vendors being in the room and stuff, I like to look. Ron gets a copy of my timeline. Anybody that works with me gets a copy of my timeline. So he knows, okay, 5 o'clock scheduled introductions or 4 o'clock or whatever I just mentioned a minute ago. So he's going to be in that room. Worst thing you can do is, I have to make sure there's specific vendors in the room. Obviously, the caterer is going to bring out his food when that timing is right, but I need to make sure that you're there before I start introductions first. That's extremely important, and I'm sure you could probably tell some stories from the days of if you went to go do a parent dance, or the DJ went to go do the parent dance and did not notify the photographer. We know, as working as professionals, my style, and that my eyes are going to look up. I know that Ron's ready. I know that his lights are ready. He's going to give me a thumbs up before we start those dances, because those moments have to be captured by you. If I was to start that and you were not ready, then you would not have those moments captured. And to create a perfect wedding day for the clients, you need a team. It's not just one person, and one vendor can't be out for just themselves. They all have to work together seamlessly to create that day, and it all flows together like that. If you weren't in the room, like I said, and I went ahead and did that dance, the overall happiness of the bride come post-wedding time, she doesn't have a picture with Dad. And whose fault does that run down to? It runs down to not one particular to me, it's a team.
Correct.
Because it's a team effort of me making sure you're there to capture that moment before I start that moment, making sure Dad's in the room, number one. I've heard a few stories in my days about a DJ calling up a father-daughter dance, bride's there, in the middle of the dance floor all by herself, Dad's not there. These are all things that go on behind the scenes at a wedding that people don't normally see and probably will never even think of, but it's our job to think of these things ahead of time, coordinate all those things ahead of time with all the vendors beforehand and during the wedding day.
Timelines are, I feel like they are, it's the part that you sit down and you can have a consult with it, whether Zoom or on the phone call with the bride and groom, saying, okay, I always start with the ceremony. The ceremony, I feel like, is the fulcrum to everything being in balance. So once I know the ceremony starts at X, that means if we're doing getting ready pictures, first look, or a private vows or anything like that beforehand, I'll just backtrack from there. So now I'm starting at X. My ceremony is going to be at X. From here, everything else goes forward from there. So there's a benefit to having a time frame and a timeline when it comes to that, but not every wedding goes smoothly. I've done weddings where people were stuck in traffic and couldn't get to, if they did a ceremony at a church and now they're driving to the venue and we are supposed to start at your walk-in at 5:45 because you're going to be eating dinner at 6, traffic happens and all of a sudden they're not there. So timelines are, I feel like, are a necessary thing, but give me an example of if a timeline doesn't go according to plan. First of all, can a timeline be made back up to get back on schedule?
Ideally. I'll give you an example. I had a bride years ago that was showing up for the wedding about 45 minutes late. So that puts, in reality, most people would think that puts your whole timeline 45 minutes in advance. But when you're working with professionals, there's ways to make that up. So what we did in this particular day is, once the ceremony was over, we shortened up social hour by 15 minutes. And that again involves going to talk to the photographer. Hey, are you able to do your job in that 45 minutes so I can make up 15 minutes here? And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to make up 15 minutes somewhere else and make up 15 minutes somewhere else. The second spot is we went right from intros, first dance, and then we decided not to do the toast right away, which we had scheduled. We went right into dinner because the food, we didn't want the food getting cold because the caterer was just about ready. So as soon as the last person was through, this one happened to be a buffet, as soon as the last person was through the buffet, we did the toast. Also, while people were finishing up, we started parent dances a little bit earlier towards the end of dinner, but back on time. At the time they should have, even though that last person just got their meal and sat down. We went ahead and did that, and again, that's coordination with the coordinator at the venue, along with the photographer, to make sure that they can fit all that.
And the caterer. The caterer too has to be
in
in on the whole thing.
So there are ways to make
adjustments.
Bad situation perfect again, so to speak. You know, and there's also, when I draw my timeline up, there's buffers. So everybody will see a timeline scheduled with a half an hour ceremony. Any of us in the wedding world know that 99.9% of the time we do not need a half an hour for the ceremony, but that's so if your ceremony is slated for 4 and you're going to start at 4:10, we're still going to be done at 4:30 because we slated that half an hour. Same thing with your half an hour that's scheduled for intros, first dance, 2 toasts. You know, if we have a problem bustling the dress and we need 10 minutes there, so now I got 20 minutes left, I can still get everybody lined up, do those intros within that 20 minutes, invite them up for their first dance, and then sit there and hope that their best man's not going to talk for half an hour.
Yes, I've noticed
so that I can get
I've noticed that
half an hour back to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But there's tricks of the trade to that one. This is how I explain to my clients. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So when it comes to toast and keeping things on track and making sure your best man, maid of honor, don't talk for an eternity. Like if I was a best man, I would probably talk for an eternity. So I tell my couples, here's what you tell your best man, your maid of honor. Add up your entire wedding day. Let's say you spend $40,000 on your wedding day and it's 5 hours. So that's $8,000 an hour. So you tell that best man, maid of honor, if they want the microphone for half an hour, they got to pay for that half an hour. So if it's $8,000 an hour, they have to write you a check for $4,000, and it usually guarantees a shorter speech by the best man, maid of honor.
And that's the difference with hiring the professional. When you hire a professional, and everybody starts someplace. I started off doing weddings as a friend kind of thing like that, but they knew I was just a friend. They knew I wasn't a professional. They knew I was just doing it as a hobby. Other DJs that I've worked with have done it the same way. They've got a Bose speaker and they come in and hey, I can do your wedding songs, and they're running a playlist from iPhone kind of thing like that. And one of the stories that I had was the groom was trying to save money, so they only did music through his iPhone. He had a whole big playlist and everything worked out the way that he wanted it scheduled out. What happened was the Bose speaker lost connection to the iPhone. So halfway, literally, it's my job to take pictures, bride and groom dancing in the middle, you know, a couple of hundred people all around, and all of a sudden the music just stops dead, complete silence. He had to go back and reconnect his phone to the Bose speaker,
He left the dance floor.
He left the dance floor. So That was the first time. He gets back over there again. He's dancing with his wife. All of a sudden, it happened again. So now his best man had to go over there and reconnect everything, kind of thing like that. And this is the difference with hiring a professional and somebody that's just trying to save a buck and cut a corner, kind of thing like that. For me, it was more embarrassing to
I'm embarrassed listening to it.
To be stuck in the middle of the dance floor without. So, and the other story I wanted to tell you about with the benefits of working with a professional, I went to the DJ and I said, hey, I'm going to do pictures with the rings. So I take the rings, I go off. I said, don't do anything till I come back. He knew where I was. I'm outside, macro lens on, laying in the ground, in the grass. I'm doing pictures with the rings and the flowers. And he starts playing the father-daughter song and didn't even tell me about it. So I had to throw my gear on the floor, grab a different camera, go back out there, and thankfully I got like the last minute of the song with the bride dancing with her father for the first time as a father-daughter dance. I went up to the guy afterwards and I said, hey, what did you do? He goes, the bride wanted it done now. I was like, then you should have said, let me get the photographer because he's not ready. If I miss that moment, I'm in trouble. That's a moment I can't go back and recreate. I can always go back and do ring pictures. I can't always go back and redo a date. So I just wanted to make sure that there was, that hiring professional is the best way to go. You got somebody that knows the vendors and it knows the venues and it knows all of that stuff. So what other benefits would you give a bride and groom advice-wise when it comes to not just hiring a wedding photographer, but advice for their wedding day?
I'm going to go back to the whole hiring the professionals things. I think it's extremely important. So I think when you're working out your budget, when you're doing your wedding, specific vendors, importantly, your DJ, your photographer, all them good guys, it's just, you don't get a do-over. You're usually doing this once, so you do not get a redo on that day. So when you're hiring those vendors, you're going to do a lot of research on them. You are going to look at their reviews. You're going to ask other vendors. You're going to ask your venue. It's a great place to find recommended vendors and ones that they trust because we're there week in, week out. We know logistically the venues, stuff. Everything that just adds up to that perfect wedding day. And that's, again, reason why Tony stays in his circle. I don't have to do site visits, which is a very time-consuming thing.
Yep.
So it opens up more time for me to concentrate on the planning with my couples because the venues that we go to, I know. So I know where the ceremony location is. I know if that ceremony location has power. I know what equipment to send my staff.
Where the loading dock is, things like that.
All that kind of stuff. I know if I need a satellite speaker for cocktail hour, if it needs to be battery powered, I know those things. But my biggest advice I could give a couple is plan accordingly with your budget to make sure that you can have those professional vendors. Think about what is most important to you on that day. Some people might want a $12,000 beautiful wedding dress. But how good are you going to feel in that $12,000 beautiful wedding dress if there's a bunch of problems at your wedding, like you're dancing with your husband and you decide not to get a DJ because you spent the $12,000 on the dress and the music stopping in the middle of that song?
Yep.
How good does that dress look at that moment?
Yeah.
Or
they're not going to remember the dress.
Feel? Yes, exactly.
They're going to remember the stopping of the music.
The experience is what you are going to remember.
Yeah.
It goes to my grandfather used to tell me spend money on experiences and not things. So that's kind of almost a perfect example of that. So you're only going to get your pictures from the day when you're hiring a professional photographer. You did not hire that professional photographer. You may not have pictures that you may be missing some. Again, going back to your story a couple minutes ago where you almost missed the father-daughter dance. Could have missed those pictures if you didn't have a professional photographer. That would not have happened because your ears were open. So even though you were concentrating on those pictures, you were still in the back of your head subconsciously concentrating on what was going on in the wedding as well. A non-professional probably would have been concentrated on those rings if they were even getting that shot, and probably wouldn't have caught any of that father-daughter dance whatsoever. So you save that moment there. I'll give an example of one time when I worked with Ron of a moment that I thought was really special that was captured, but if a professional photographer was not there, it would not have been captured. And it was a moment that we worked together last month, and again, us professionals pay attention to everything. And Dad, at some point, and I think you were actually there with me when the bride told us that he was kind of getting forgetful and he was forgetting things as he was getting older. And he had come up to me later on in the wedding and he says, "Hey, I happen to know what my wedding song was, and can you play it?" So I had two thoughts in my head. One, picture perfect moment, because him and mom are going to be on the dance floor. I need to get Ron. Two, it needs to happen now because of what the bride just told me. She said he tends to forget things. So while he was in this moment with himself, remembering this, I wanted that song to go up right away. So my eyes first focused at, I got a minute. I look at my screen. I got a minute before I need to mix into the next song. I need to grab Ron and let him know, because at this time our dance floor was packed. So you could have been all the way on the other side, but I needed you to come to the other side and get mom and dad in that picture, because that's a moment that she's going to cherish and she's going to have that picture. And if she did not have a professional photographer, that's a moment that would definitely not have been caught on her wedding day.
Yeah.
Those are ways that us professionals work together
Yeah.
to make sure that we're helping each other out to do our jobs, that they have a perfect day.
Yep. Yeah. For me, I do the same thing too. Working with other professionals, I feel like it's the same thing where when I'm not available, I send the bride and groom 4 other options for photographers. When I am available, or even if I try not to get involved after that. If a bride calls me up and say, hey, and they hire me, hey, do you have somebody to marry you yet? Who's doing your flowers? Do you have a dress yet? And what I'll do is I'll send back a list of professional vendors that I work with all the time. So I'll send back 4 DJ possibilities. I'll send back 4 places for dresses, 4 options. So I always try and do that. So there's no kickbacks that I give or get. I don't get a kickback. Some people feel like because I'm recommending them that I get a kickback from them, and that's not the case when it comes to that. I send people professional vendors because it makes my job easier working with other professional vendors. And I feel like the same way that they feel like they have, they can trust and rely that we're being professional about what we're doing. So that's one of the benefits that I find on something like that is the kickbacks and things like that, and referring other people when it comes to venues and stuff like that. So is there any other advice you'd give a bride and groom other than, hire a professional? I feel like that should be the DJ that did not call me about that other thing. He was not a professional. He was a family friend. And he felt bad. The bride was telling him what to do. As a professional vendor, I feel like he would be like, okay, I'll take care of it in just a second. I'll call you when I'm ready. And then secretly go find me and then come back again. So the less hiccups in the background the bride and groom see, I cannot count how many times a bride and groom has come back to myself or to you and say, oh my God, that flowed so easily. Explain to me a flow on a wedding day. There's always hiccups, but explain to me what a flow is. It's not just a timeline thing. There's a right time and a wrong time to play songs. So Give me a little bit of a brief introduction about that. Like, what would you start with as far as songs? Let's say the father-daughter dance just ended. What would be your go-to kind of set to get people out on the dance floor?
Well, if it's going to be the first song of party time, say that's our last formality, we're opening up the dance floor, we get to go directly into what we call a banger.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a song that you want everybody in the room, not just the Pacific generation. Yeah. You want everybody in the room to be familiar. Does that make a difference on
what kind of music? Now, if you were doing an older couple, the same banger going into that end of the night songs list would not be the same as somebody that's in their 20s. Correct. Okay.
But we could go, we'll go, say, I'll try to put a number on it. Say 90% of weddings, you're going to have people that range from early 20s, sometimes even teens, all the way up to 80, 90 years old. So your first set is, you have to hit everybody, because as soon as everything, to me, like I said, I know it's kind of hard to explain, but it's almost psychological. So once you get that dance floor packed, it's very easy to keep
them there, right?
It's not easy, and then I'll give you something on the flow of how that can screw up a dance floor. Let's just say we go through our day, we have our ceremony, we have our social order, we do our intros, we do our first dance, we do our toast, we go right into dinner, and the bride and groom will now want to do table rounds, but now I can feel the room because I've been doing this for so long. They're ready to dance and party. So now I have to make a decision. Now we still have cake and parent dances left. So now the decision comes. I walk up the bride and groom. I will ask them, do you want to finish table rounds later? I can kind of feel everybody getting a little antsy. They're ready to party. Let's keep the flow moving, on track. Let's go do that cake, the parent dances, open up the dance floor, and then you can go talk to the guests. Of course, I do not tell them at that point in time that there's going to be no guests to talk to, because they're all going to be on the dance floor. Little secret of the trade. And then they're looking around, we can't go to table number 7, nobody's there no more, they're dancing. Which is great, that's what I want them to do when it comes to that
that's
time.
what they want.
But you don't want to do something like, they still want to do table rounds, and then you open up that dance floor, and then you ask all those guests 20 minutes later to then sit so you can do the cake and parent dances. It does not feel right.
That's
to a
the
guest.
flow I was talking
That's
about.
The flow.
That's the flow.
It's certain things that you can't do, and that's when you need professionals, because professionals know that. Somebody that's non-professional will just, instead of giving that bride and groom advice on that flow and to try to stick with the flow, they will just go, okay. Let's do it that way, and then it will get messed up. So once that DJ packs that dance floor up, asks everybody to sit, which just feels weird to do that cake cutting and to do those parent dances. Now he has to start that whole process over again, and it does not feel right to the guests. You kind of lose their mentality on it, and it takes a little while to repack that dance floor. But your first set of songs definitely has to be something that goes towards the whole crowd, so you can get as many people from the beginning as possible. Then you can step back, go through the genres, and do stuff like that. Once you get them moving, it's a mentality that you have to stick to. You know, once you get to the end of the night, 99% of the time you're playing newer music, because your older guests might have left, or they're tired of just sitting down. And it's your young people that are on the dance floor.
You almost have to read the room. I cannot emphasize this enough. The subject came up when my wife and I were talking about read the room. And me not being a DJ and not having any rhythmic bone in my body, I can tell when the room starts to kind of thing. And I love a DJ that can just start playing those 1 or 2 songs kind of thing like that, and all of a sudden everybody starts coming up to the dance floor. That's great. But I like a DJ that I can keep them on the dance floor. And I feel like that's the ebb and flow of it. Is one bad song, you can have 35 people out of 45 sitting down because they didn't like that song, and all of a sudden they sit down, and it was just the wrong song. But reading the room kind of thing like that, it's very important.
And that's when there's only 20 seconds of that song.
Yeah.
If you ever seen, I'm sure you've seen it if you were paying close attention to, if I felt like I lost a little bit too many, I immediately get out of that song. Your DJ should not just go, oh well, and just keep going with that song if it didn't work. And everybody makes a mistake on reading the crowd like that.
And the song doesn't just stop.
Totally banger.
It starts going down, the next one starts coming up.
Or either mixing or fading into the next one. But you got to get out of it if it's not working. The worst thing, you could have 150 people on the dance floor, then all of a sudden you have 2. Now the problem when you could run into that is if it's the bride and the groom, and it's their request.
I've done, yes, agreed, and I agree. And you have to honor the request.
Yes.
You have to honor the request.
That goes into planning beforehand, because I do discuss those requests with the couple, and
that's
will
the
tell
timeline.
them,
if I play that,
it might, and I'm an honest guy, and I'm up front, and I said, this might clear your dance floor. Kind of like that moment a few weeks back when I played the song for the Flower Girl.
I was just coming up with that story.
I had the place jamming.
There's 75 people on the dance floor.
It was a flip of a coin, and I took my chance because I had already queued it up in the headphones and listened to it, and I was not certain. It was kind of a win-lose situation for the DJ of, I want to make this little girl happy.
And there was only 2 little girls at the wedding.
That's it. Kill the vibe of my dance floor that I have going on. But because I've been doing this for so long, I already had felt the crowd, and I knew if I did kill that vibe a little bit, I would get, that was a type of crowd where I would be able to get them back in a snap of a finger. It wouldn't have took me the 10-15 minutes to get them back. So I wasn't worried about it, and nobody left the dance floor.
Nobody left the dance floor. So,
and I can't remember the name of the song for the life of me, but it was nothing mainstream that anybody would have known. It was something out of a cartoon or a show,
a popular show right now.
Or
and we have these signals, and Tony looks at me, he goes, watch this. And all of a sudden he starts playing it like this, and then that one song starts going down, and the next song starts coming up, like almost like it went from like, you know, Bruce Springsteen, you know, Born in the USA, everybody singing, to starts to fade down to like, it wasn't Baby Shark, but it was you know, something like that. It was like completely opposite. And I'm looking at it, I was like, and I'm watching, and the little girl lit up like a Christmas tree because you just played her song. Now all the parents are around and the grandparents are around this little girl, and there was only 2 little girls at this wedding. They're all watching her start to kind of dance, and it was about freezing and things like. So they she's doing the whole thing. All of a sudden, the other 50 people on the dance floor are listening to the words and doing exactly what the song was telling it to do. So the girl made her night, and everybody still stayed on the dance floor. And then once that song was done, it went right back into dancing after that. It was priceless. It was priceless.
And it was a take your chance, gut feeling type of thing where, you know, I knew that I would get them back if I lost them, and I would please the girls. So I had to do.
That's all that. Yeah,
both.
I agree. And I feel like as an adult, if they got mad because you played something like that, you know, the little girl's part of the wedding party. You made her night by doing that. And I'm there taking pictures of everybody kind of going around the same song. Now in my pictures, you don't know what song they're playing, but to the little girl, she's going to see her pictures, and she's going to
know what song I was.
Yeah, it was really, really weird. So, all right. So other than family, friends, and unprofessional vendors and things like that, the importance of having a professional vendor, no matter which one it is, the importance of having a timeline and a time for the importance of the flow of a day, that was very important. So we talked about that too. So is there anything else that we could talk about as far as a wedding in any sense?
I would just go back to the advice on the bride and groom should definitely prioritize what is most important to them for that day.
Yeah.
You know, and not necessarily think about what vendor is the most important or what this is most important. Think of the experience. What part of the experience do you want being most important? Do you want to have tons of fun at your wedding? Do you want the food to be this 10-star meal that you've never had in your life that you want to impress your guests with? What is most important to you on those aspects of the day? Do you want 300 guests at your wedding, or do you want to only invite the 100 most important people and then take a little bit of that budget and move it over here to something else that's more important? There's tons of things to think about. Obviously your venue and your catering, if it's separately or included all in one, is going to be your biggest expense of the day. So you can have that 10-star caterer, still have a great DJ and a photographer, but then go, okay, well, instead of inviting 350 people, I'm going to invite 200 people so I can take that budget and now get that, or maybe get that $12,000 wedding dress, or get the $9,000 flower package, or whatever is the most important to you.
So what do you think about the trends that are happening with that? I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like less people are doing garter belt and bouquet toss.
Almost none.
I found that same thing. I find a lot less people or more people are doing private cake cutting with just the bride and groom off to the side,
and
then instead of
never forget that private cake cutting.
and then, or instead of everybody looking at them, and I feel like people are doing a little bit more of that private list stuff like that. What are some of the things that, as many weddings as you do, what do you feel like, let's say just 5 years ago, this was the most thing, everybody when their brother was doing this, garter belts and everything else like that, which can get out of hand in my opinion.
Years ago, dollar dances.
Dollar dances, same thing too. And I feel like we just aged ourselves on that, but I feel like those things are just not there anymore. They're just, the dollar dances are not anymore, the bouquet toss, the garter belts, they're not doing them anymore. Quiet, private cake cutting are starting to be a little bit more in there. I feel like you and I have talked about this. We've had a pretty good, pretty big bunch of brides and grooms that don't like attention.
Yes.
So what's some advice? Yes, what would some advice you would give to a bride and groom?
Can also go back to the whole professional vendors and the planning process. So I have 99%, I would give a number, literally 99%, that want to shorten formality dances, meaning their first dance, parent dances, anything like that. They don't want to be the center of attention for too long. So I pre-talk about this with them, and instead of them saying, I want to do 1 minute and 26 seconds, I want you to stop at this particular spot, I try to shy them away from that, and there's 2 reasons behind that. One is goes to the photographer. I need to make sure they have enough time. Two, they might change their mind while they're actually doing the dance. Let's say she's dancing with Dad and she told me to stop at 1 minute and 26 seconds, and now she's in a deep conversation of something extremely important going on with a conversation with Dad on the dance floor, and she doesn't want it to stop at a time, but she's already pre-told me that 1 minute and 26 seconds. What I have them do, and I tell them right before the dance, is give me a little wink, little wave. If I gently shake my head no, that just means I'm looking at your photographer. I don't feel they have enough pictures yet. Bear with me for a few more seconds. And that way there, the decision does not have to be made beforehand. It can be made in the moment.
Yeah, in the moment, yep.
So to speak. And
That's reading the room.
And I'm also discussing these things with the photographer beforehand.
Yep.
I have a note on my planning form that says, we're gonna shorten this dance up, we're gonna shorten this dance up.
And then you tell me,
know beforehand, we're shortening this up. Give me a look when you have enough pictures, and she's going to give me a nod when she's ready. And then if I already have the look from you that you have enough pictures, I can go ahead and get out of that song and let her shorten it up. If you haven't nodded at me yet, I just gently shake my head no to the bride, give me 15 more seconds, let him take a couple more pictures. She knows the drill because I've already discussed it with her beforehand, and I've already discussed it with the photographer beforehand. But as far as new trends go, biggest one this year so far, groom walk song for the ceremony, separate song. So instead of having a bridal party walk song,
I have not had
a bride walk down the aisle song, and then your recessional song after you're pronounced married, the groom is now walking down the aisle to his own song, gets his own song, and it's 50% so far this year for me.
Wow.
That has it. And then the bridal party will then start after. So now I have 3 processional songs instead of the normal 2. Which I think it kind of gives them that moment, so I do like that trend. I think that one actually might stick around for a little while. The one with the shortened parent dances and the shortened first dance, that's, I think, is going to stick around. I think that's going to be not a trend, a new norm, so to speak. Private last dance, that's one of my favorite trends, and there's 2 different ways to pull that off. One, after you have your last dance with your guest, you can then send the guest out to whatever venue you're at, out front, outside, in the hallway, wherever. They're going to make an arch. Now, once they're out there, you then can have a private last dance because they're out of the room. And before you run through that arch, I can hit that song for you. I've asked all the staff to leave the room. I leave the room. The couple gets that moment all to themselves. And then once the private last dance is over, they then run through the arch. Or after the last dance with the guest, they then can run through the arch, sneak back in, and then do a private last dance. Either or, 2 different ways to accomplish
that's cool. I didn't know about that one.
But I've had numerous brides post-wedding tell me that was their favorite part of the wedding day.
What about, change the subject again, the table dash thing?
Did you see the new one?
I did.
With the chairs in the middle of the dance floor?
I haven't had that one done to me yet. But talk about the old one first.
The old one is dangerous.
It is. I had a groom fall down, and I had a groom knock over a table full of salads.
I like it from a flow, a timeline, and a standpoint. That works perfect because technically you've now visited all your guest tables, and you've gotten a shot with your photographer with all those guest tables, all within one song by doing that table dash. So to me, I like it that, but I've seen a couple times where it got a little bit
people
scary.
Trip.
You know, it's just too much of a rush. And what I do with it is, I'm talking to you first. Before I started, I'm talking to the bride and groom. I go over, I tell table number 1 to get ready. Then I go on a microphone, I explain it to everybody. And while I see the photographer, the bride and the groom, and at table number 1, I'm already telling table number 2 to get ready. When they're at table number 2, I'm telling table number 3 to get ready. And I've always had everybody accomplish it in one song, but I've seen a couple times where a chair pops out, somebody goes flying over it. You don't want to end your wedding day in the emergency room because you wanted to have that 5 minutes of fun. The new one that I've seen of putting the bride and the groom in the chairs in the middle,
one. I haven't done that yet.
Having the tables one by one jump up real quick, join them, photographer gets a shot. Table number 2, join them all within one song again. It might not be safer for the guests, but it's safer for the bride and the groom.
And the photographer. The photographer doesn't have to run around behind something like that. The only hiccup that I see with both of them, and it's just absolutely common sense, or the lack of, is the alcohol involved. When you add that table dash part in there, they've already had their cocktail hour, so they've already had their liquid courage, so they've already done something like that. And that's sometimes where I feel like I think it's a great idea, but I think there's a little bit of danger in that. And I tell my brides and grooms, I know it's a dash, don't run. Let them haste.
Not that big.
That's
Take
right.
That 10 seconds.
That's right. They're over there. They're making they know you're coming. Do not run. And I've had grooms trip over chairs because somebody's slipping out the chair backwards. He fell over. Another person knocked over a whole big salad. It was a big table full of all salads and stuff like that. The groom went running by. He had a little bit too much to drink ahead of time and knocked all the salads up. So now it turns into that table dash where like, hey, let's go get some fun memories into, they don't remember everybody running around doing that. They remember, oh my God, the groom knocked over the salad thing. So
they're visiting the groom in the ER.
Yeah. So any other trends that you see on the horizon? I don't. I feel like those are the only ones that have been up there lately. Yeah.
We never know what'll come up.
Yeah, it's only May right now.
I do have another one. This is 3 times so far this year, which threw me off a little bit when at first because I'm a double checker, I have to double check everything. I've had a lot of grooms taking the bride's last name, 3 of them so far this year.
Really?
Yes.
That is something I've never even heard of.
Up until this year, this was a first for me beginning of the year, and I've had 3 of them so far this year. And it was 2 of them were due to doctorates. So she was getting a doctorate, and so she didn't want to switch her last name, and he said, I think his last name was Smith, so can't blame him. Yep. Don't want Smith no more. Yeah. And I forgot what the reason was on the 3rd one, but they were all really good explanations behind them all, and one of them was one of my guys' weddings, so I made a note, just so they didn't think that Tony messed up. So for intros and looking down going, Tony put the wrong last name. No, he didn't. It's the right one, so I make a little note and I make them aware of that stuff beforehand so they know all that stuff.
That's awesome.
One of the things that over the years, I've always suggested to my couples, whenever not taking a last name or hyphenating a name, when it comes to intros, just use first names. And the reason behind it is we still have older generation out there that takes that stuff a little bit to heart.
I agree.
And it's not in the 2023 era. We did miss one trend. Introduction trend. 2 of them. One, just first names, which really easy for the DJ because I don't have to pronounce those last names that have 26 letters in them. Makes it really nice.
Yeah.
And the second is, which I find a lot of fun, instead of coming in pairs, I'm now introducing all the bridesmaids in together to their song, and then all the groomsmen and the best man in together.
Wow, does that cut your intros in timeline?
Gives me more buffer during that half an hour. That probably saved 4 minutes right there.
So if for some reason something went over, or like the ceremony, or photographer took too long to take pictures, kind of thing like that, and all of a sudden you need a little bit, once you get to that part, all of a sudden they come in and you're back on track, kind of thing like that.
Just, sometimes it's parents. Parents are 50-50 on the intros these days. Sometimes it's literally the bridesmaids with the maid of honor, and then the groomsmen with the best man, and then the couple. Yeah. And it's extremely quick, but it's also a lot of fun because they all rush in together. They create this circle on the dance floor during that intro. They dance, and then they move to the side, and I get the next one, and they do the same thing. It really sets the tone for how fun the night's going to be. I do like that.
Yeah. That's a really good, I haven't done that one. I haven't seen that one yet.
I don't want to say the old way is old school, but it's kind of one of those things where you do it a certain way for so many years, and then you got to come up with something different to keep things alive and exciting, and that's one of them.
Could you say
a bridesmaid and groomsman come in, lock arms, walk in, next bridesmaid and groomsman?
Could you say also that sometimes the wedding party as individuals don't like the spotlight and the attention on them. So when they come out with 5 or 6 people, it's 5 or 6 people. So this is the difference in reading the room, recognizing that some people are a little bit more timid, kind of thing like that. They don't like that attention, but they're in a wedding party. They're going to come out and they don't want to come out and go, that's a little awkward too, but then you don't want those people coming out, doing jumping jacks and flips, kind of thing. So I can see a trend of that happening where they do wedding party, guys come out together, and then all the girls come out together, and all of a sudden it's not just one other person that you're walking out with, and you get that, I can see that.
A lot more fun, and think about
entertaining,
Think about a bridesmaid and a groomsman. They're paired up, they're walking down the aisle together. Now they're walking in introductions together. They might not even know each other. They might have just met at the rehearsal the night before.
That's true.
A friend from Texas and a friend from Alabama.
True. College, you met in college and you're from 2 different sides.
The uncomfortableness is there, so this is going to make them have a lot more fun as well.
Yeah. And I agree, and I feel like all the things that we touched on tonight about just the hiring professional vendors, the family, friends, the pros and cons, the trends that are happening now, the benefits of the timeline and the flow and getting a professional that can read the room, kind of thing like that. There's really nothing else that can be added to that whole thing except for the benefit of, that's what this video was all about, was the benefit of working with familiar vendors. There's a flow that happens that you know this person's going to be in that spot, that person's going to be in that spot. You have signals, you got things that flow together, kind of thing like that. So, anything else?
Not that I can think of.
So, thank you guys for coming back to the channel. I appreciate your time. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and remember, I'll put Tony's information all down below. Go give him a follow on Instagram and his socials. Check out his website, and looking forward to doing more things like this based on business and professional vendors of some sort, whether wedding industry or not. So stay tuned, put them comments down below, and peace.